In the quiet darkness of an Amarillo night, a brutal act of violence shattered the family's home, leaving a community grappling with shock and grief. The peaceful life of Shereena Webster, a 21-year-old mother, was violently cut short by a hail of bullets, her young daughter the first to stumble upon the horrifying scene. What began as a search for answers quickly unraveled into a chilling tale of obsession, violence, and betrayal. Join us as we unravel the twisted events leading to the murder of Shereena Webster, a case where love turned deadly, and uncover the shocking details that lie at the heart of this tragic story. But before Get starts, do subscribe to True Crime Sam. Meet Shereena Webster, a loving mother whose life was cruelly cut short. Learn about the vibrant soul whose loss has left a gaping void. Shereena Webster, a 21-year-old mother, was a full of life and loving individual whose life was sadly cut short. She was born and raised in the neighborhood and had a group of family and friends. Webster graduated from high school and wanted to work in healthcare. She was a dedicated mother to her 5-year-old daughter, the center of her world. Webster was recognized for her kindness, and help, often putting in order of importance the needs of others over her own. She belonged to a local church and started working in her neighborhood. Webster's relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Erik Rivas. She had been very hard, and friends and relatives said she had been trying to separate herself from him in the months before her murder. Despite her young age, Webster had already faced significant challenges in her life, but she remained a beacon of hope and positivity for those around her. She was a loyal and caring parent to her 5-year-old daughter, who was found to be incredibly brave in the face of impossible-to-imagine horror. Her unconscious murder has left a wide hole in the lives of those who knew and loved her, and her community is still wrestling with the shock and sadness of her unfortunate passing. Early morning gunfire ends a young mother's life. Find out how a series of shocking events led to a murder that rocked a community. Shereena Webster was violently murdered in her Amarillo home in the early hours of Thursday morning. She was found by her 5-year-old daughter, who had been sleeping in the same room with multiple gunshot wounds. Webster had been shot many times, and police found shell casings at the scene. The murder is believed to have happened between 3 a.m. and 5:15 a.m., with Rivas's vehicle seen leaving the area around 4:15 a.m. A ladder from Rivas's workplace was found against Webster's locked back fence, suggesting that he may have entered the property through the backyard. Footprints were also found in the backyard, leading investigators to believe that Rivas may have tried to escape through the back door. The murder was an unconscious act of violence, with Webster's young daughter left to struggle with the serious physical or emotional harm of discovering her mother's body. According to the criminal complaint, Shereena Webster's 5-year-old daughter discovered her mother following the gunshot. The small girl then contacted her grandma, Patricia Byington, who dialed 911. The shooting occurred early Thursday morning at Webster's home in Amarillo. When officers arrived at 5:15 a.m., they discovered Webster's body and determined she had been shot many times. At first, the police responded to a 911 call made by Webster's mother, Patricia Byington, after her 5-year-old granddaughter discovered Webster's body. Upon the act of reaching a destination, officers found Webster died with multiple gunshot wounds and immediately secured the crime scene. Detectives then began talking to people in the area, speaking with neighbors and gathering video. One neighbor reported seeing Erik Rivas's vehicle parked outside Webster's home around 3 a.m., while another gave a video of Rivas's car leaving the scene at 4:15 a.m. But wait, who was Rivas? Erik Rivas, the suspect in the murder of Shereena Webster, is the victim's 25-year-old ex-boyfriend. He has a difficult past, including a history of violent behavior and encounters with authorities. Rivas and Webster's relationship was volatile, with frequent fighting and physical altercations. Despite their efforts to reconcile, the relationship eventually collapsed, and Webster had tried to separate herself from Rivas in the months preceding her death. People who know Rivas describe him as possessive, domineering, and prone to outbursts of wrath. He had previously shown up at Webster's house uninvited and made threatening threats to her. Rivas's behavior became more unpredictable and frightening in the days leading up to Webster's murder, culminating in the awful events of Thursday morning. Erik Mitchell Rivas and Shereena Webster had a passionate yet volatile relationship that included heated arguments, they said. The pair had been dating on and off for years when Webster eventually called it a day because Rivas was too controlling and possessive. And even though they tried to make it work, Rivas's possessiveness only escalated when Webster attempted to pull away. Webster, who was trying to break free of Rivas in the months beforehand, but could not keep him from coming over uninvited and making threatening comments toward her. The relationship was a vicious circle of violence and dread, with Webster caught in a web of emotional manipulation and abuse. Rivas's preoccupation with Webster eventually contributed to her terrible death, as he couldn't accept that she was moving on without him. From a 911 call to crucial surveillance footage, follow the investigative trail that unearthed the truth behind Shereena Webster's death. Investigators received a search warrant for Rivas's residence and workplace, where they found a 9mm handgun and bullets matching the shell casings at the crime scene. Further analysis showed Rivas's fingerprints on the latter used to access Webster's backyard and his DNA on the shell casings. The police also discovered a text message conversation between Rivas and Webster, pointing to a noisy and confusing relationship and a history of threats. As the events that proved something mounted, detectives brought Rivas in for questioning, during which he showed unpredictable, strange behavior and gave disagreeing good reasons for not being somewhere or not being involved in a crime. After this, the police arrested Rivas and charged him with Webster's murder. Throughout the act of asking questions and trying to find the truth about something, extremely careful, crime-solving, science-based experts carefully studied events that prove something, including those related to bullets and rockets. Analysis, fingerprint comparison, and DNA testing turned it into a solid case against Rivas. The careful act of asking questions and trying to find the truth about something in the end told about a calculated and pre-planned act of violence, leading to Rivas's arrest and prosecution for Webster's sad murder. Several witnesses were vital to the investigation of Shereena Webster's murder. A neighbor, who preferred to remain unidentified, reported seeing Erik Mitchell Rivas's vehicle parked outside Webster's home at 3 a.m. on the day of the murder. Another neighbor, who had surveillance footage, corroborated that Rivas's car was still there at 4:15 a.m. Webster's 5-year-old daughter, who found her mother's death, was also a significant witness. She gave the police a statement, recounting the events of the morning and identifying Rivas as the individual she saw leaving the site. Patricia Byington, Webster's mother, also testified about Webster and Rivas's stormy relationship, which included threats and violence. Rivas's co-workers also came forward, claiming that he had been acting suspiciously in the days preceding the murder, even discussing his plans to attack Webster. These witnesses, along with others, helped piece together the events surrounding Webster's unfortunate murder, identifying Rivas as the primary suspect. The evidence against Erik Mitchell Rivas was strong and incriminating. Surveillance footage showed his vehicle parked outside Webster's house around 3 a.m. and left at 4:15 a.m., putting him near the crime scene. A 9mm handgun discovered at his office was ballistically matched to the crime scene's round casings, establishing a direct link to the murder. Rivas's fingerprints were discovered on the ladder used to access Webster's property, as well as his DNA on the shot casings. Text message chats between Rivas and Webster revealed a volatile relationship and a history of threats, while witness accounts from neighbors, Webster's daughter, and Rivas' co-workers all implicated him in the crime. In addition, footprints in the backyard matched Rivas' shoe size and type, and a spent shell casing was discovered in his vehicle. Rivas's ammunition purchases in the days preceding the murder strengthened the case against him. When questioned by authorities, Rivas displayed erratic conduct and presented contradictory alibis, cementing his status as the primary suspect in Webster's terrible death. What drove Erik Rivas to murder the woman he claimed to love? Explore the dark motivations behind this tragic crime. Erik Mitchell Rivas' motive for killing Shereena Webster was a toxic combination of possessiveness, jealousy, fury, a desire for control, and a fear of abandonment. He had a history of dominating behavior and was unable to accept the end of their relationship, which resulted in significant bitterness and animosity toward Webster. Rivas, consumed by jealousy, reacted violently and fatally, driven by a desire to have complete control over Webster's life and prevent her from moving on. His acts were also motivated by fear of desertion and rejection, which drove him to ruin the person he claimed to love. This perverse motivation eventually drove Rivas to perform a horrible act, killing Webster and leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Erik Mitchell Rivas went on trial last week, with each day in court digging deeper into the incident. During the first session, prosecutors described what evidence they had against Rivas in their opening statement. The second part of the hearing focused on testimony from Webster's family and friends who discussed her life, as well as what they lost. During the third session, prosecutors played surveillance tapes and a ballistics examiner testified that Rivas was connected to the crime scene. During the fourth sitting, Rivas's defense team presented their evidence in an attempt to paint doubt on that of the prosecution and throw various theories as possibilities instead. At his fifth session, some members of Rivas's own family testified against him and portrayed the young man as a troubled kid with many run-ins involving violent crime. The last session was Rivas's final statement to the jury, concluding with closing arguments from prosecutors reminding them of all of his evidence and why Rivas needed to be convicted. The jury deliberated for several hours before it found Rivas guilty of first-degree murder. The sentencing hearing concluded with Rivas receiving a life without parole sentence, which afforded some peace to Webster's family members. Members of the jury Thursday heard a mountain of evidence prosecutors say linked Erik Mitchell Rivas with murder victim Shereena Webster during his trial on 14 felony counts. The government's case rested largely on the footage, ballistics, prints, and eyewitness accounts that all made way for Rivas being convicted. The defense, by contrast, tried to sow seeds of reasonable doubt about the probable cause and offered a different theory. However, an indication that he had not persuaded the jury. Webster's family and friends offered gut-wrenching testimony about her life, what they missed the most since she was killed, and how desperately they wished to hear from Rivas's own family members, who described a turbulent past full of violent acts. The jury returned a guilty judgment after many hours of deliberation and convicted Rivas of first-degree murder. The judge then sentenced Rivas to life in prison without the possibility of release, offering some closure to Webster's loved ones while also serving as a brutal warning of the tragic repercussions of domestic violence. Erik Mitchell Rivas's conviction and sentencing provided Shereena Webster's family and friends with a sense of closure and justice. Patricia Byington, Webster's mother, expressed relief that the trial was concluded and that Rivas would spend the rest of his life in prison. The community banded together to support Webster's loved ones, conducting vigils and fundraisers to help them heal. The case triggered a broader discussion about domestic abuse and the need for more victim care and resources. Local groups observed an uptick in contacts and requests for aid as the case exposed the horrific consequences of abuse. Rivas's family, on the other hand, struggled to accept the conviction, with some members expressing disbelief and denial. As Rivas began serving his life sentence, Webster's family continued to remember her, aiming to leave a legacy of hope and healing. The case will always be a heartbreaking reminder of the devastation caused by domestic violence, as well as a monument to the power of justice and the human spirit's endurance. Shereena Webster's murder had a tremendous impact on the community, eliciting shock, grief, and fury. Friends, relatives, and neighbors were crushed by the loss of a vivacious and lovely young woman, and the brutality of her killing shook the neighborhood. Locals rallied around Webster's family, providing support and sorrow, and a candlelight vigil was held in her memory. The case also generated a broader discussion about domestic abuse, with community leaders and groups banding together to raise awareness and provide support to victims. The local police force expanded its efforts to combat domestic violence, and support organizations were developed to assist people impacted by abuse. The community banded together to establish a memorial fund in Webster's name, providing financial support to her family and contributing to a legacy of hope and healing. Despite the gloom of tragedy, the community found a way to band together and make a positive difference, ensuring that Shereena Webster's memory would live on. Finally, Shereena Webster's terrible death by her ex-boyfriend Erik Rivas served as a stark reminder of the risks of domestic violence. The story demonstrated the necessity of identifying indicators of abuse and seeking help before it is too late. Law enforcement, prosecutors, and Webster's loved ones worked tirelessly to serve justice and hold Rivas accountable for his horrible murder. The case also spurred a broader discussion about domestic abuse, encouraging others to speak up and seek help. As we celebrate Shereena Webster's life and legacy, we honor her memory by continuing to fight domestic violence and providing assistance to those affected. May her story serve as a reminder of the devastating consequences of abuse and the importance of seeking help and support. Rest in peace, Shereena Webster. And that is the heartbreaking story of Shereena Webster, whose life was cut short by domestic violence. We hope that this tale will raise awareness about the dangers of abuse and the significance of seeking help. Thank you for viewing our channel, True Crime Sam, where we investigate true crime stories and highlight critical social concerns. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel to receive more thought-provoking content. Click the notification bell to stay up to date on our latest videos. Let us work together to build a supportive and encouraging community. Subscribe today to join the conversation.